took it to 10.
Baby bet, ayy, couple racks, ayy, couple Grammys on him, couple plaques, ayy, that's a fact, ayy, throw it back, ayy, and this one is for the champion. Ain't lost since I began. Funny how you said it was the yeah. Then I went did it again. I told you long ago on the road, I got what they waiting for. Don't run from nothing, dog. Get your soul, just tell them ain't laying low. You was never really rooting for me anyway. When I'm back up at the top, I wanna hear you say, you don't run from nothing, dog. Get your soul, just tell them that the break is over.
Hello and welcome in, and shout out to Kashka for that cold open. They're absolute memes. If you didn't see it on Twitter, then you get to see it today. But we are here today for day 12 of the LJL. Things are popping off. It's your boy J Real coming in with the hosting. It's Middle Court and Melvin Izzle that I'm joined with. Welcome in, lads. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm glad that we've got the LJL back after our break. We had some crazy games on day 11, and the matchups that we've got today are maybe even spicier.
Absolutely tend to agree. The fact that we get to come back in and then together handle both DFM Sengoku and now DFM Hawks, you can't ask for more than that at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I've got a quick question right now for you guys. And I don't know if you're aware of this or if maybe there's some sneaky things happening in the background of the LJL, but it feels like Jin has maybe invaded because we've got 4 teams with 4 wins, all sitting in 4th place, and we've got 4 games today. It's a bit mad at the moment in the LJL. You know, a lot of things are lining up.
Illuminati triangles, mate.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's a square, though. That's the thing, right? You got the 4 sides and everything to go with it.
Exactly. Now, if Illuminati was truly real, V3 would have got a win. But
Yeah.
with that being said, coming into this game, obviously matchup number 1 of our 4 special, it's going to be DFM versus the Hawks. And to be fair, if we were talking about this last split, this wouldn't have been a chat. You know, we would have been like, okay, DFM, they're coming through, they're going to look strong. This year, though, the Hawks are flying. They've spread their wings and they're ready to soar. Middle court, do you feel like the Hawks could potentially win today against DFM?
I mean, potentially, hopefully they're going to soar like an eagle and not like Icarus and fall to the ground. But finally, this Hawks roster that had so much potential in spring has actually come together and sort of slotted into their position in the LGL where we kind of expected them to. Definitely within reach of DFM and Sengoku if those teams are maybe slipping up a little bit, but so far ahead of the chasing pack that they're kind of in a weird spot where they're on their own in 3rd place at the moment. We'll have to see if they're able to push a little bit further up the table with a win against DFM today.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed. And it's a situation where realistically, you know what? Last year, so I said last split, my bad, we wouldn't have even talked about this. Sengoku against the top 3, which I am going to be including Rascal Jesters just because they were in the top 3 last split, were 0-9. The Hawks were not finding wins against the Sengoku, DFM, or the Rascal Jesters. This split, though, it has been a lot closer. They are 1-3, though, so far. They've played 4 matches, only picking up 1 win against Rascal Jesters in the second round robin. Melvin Izzle, they've got a lot better, the Hawks, but so have DFM. They came back last match day, and they absolutely stomped Sengoku.
Yeah, it was definitely a shellacking of a match, let's say. It was one that, if anything, it did fill us with a bit of hope, though, considering how the first matchup between Sengoku and DFM went. So we all know, as we saw in that cold open at the beginning, that DFM and Sengoku are handedly far and away at the top. But I actually do think that the Hawks shouldn't be underestimated. They are our 3rd place team, and if you exclude their losses to those top 2, they're 8-1, and their first loss was their first game to Rascal Jester, which, when you start to take away those caveats, I know it's not the thing where you say, oh, Rumble has the 100% win rate if you take away all his losses, but seriously, though, the Hawks do look quite good on their match we got to see coming back in against Rascal Jester. I think their objective control, which was their biggest falling point up to this moment, was actually solid.
Yeah, indeed. Definitely looking a lot better since they had a bit of a break. Maybe, you know, they got to roost. They got to have a bit of a nest. They've leveled up in terms of their HP and they're ready to take on DFM. Admittedly, the only caveat I will say is the Hawks may have got better. DFM have for sure got better. Yeah. Middlecourt, what's the game plan for Hawks here? Do they need to come in swinging? Do they need to swoop down and take the early game? Or do they kind of need to just chill, let the wind carry them up until that 25-minute mark?
I think that the early game is definitely going to be the point of contention in this matchup. DFM and the Hawks are actually our top two in terms of their goal difference at 15. I think DFM is on like 2.5k. The Hawks is on 1.3. And when you consider that Sengoku have actually got a fairly even early game, I don't think anyone should have been surprised that DFM were as aggressive as they were in the Sengoku game. Maybe surprised that it was as effective as it ended up being. But I think the Hawks have to attack DFM in the early stages because that's where they've been finding a lot of their strength. Yes, you are also going to be indexing into where DFM have actually been the strongest. But I don't think that if this game goes later and later on, that Hawks have quite got the experience together as a roster to play out those late game team fights as well as our champions can.
Yeah, and they do say offense is the best defense. Melvin Itzel, when we come into this game, we're talking about potentially attacking the early game. Are there any particular picks on this patch that you feel like, you know what, Hawks, you need to pick this up?
Okay, so I think that a big one is going to be the Sivir rework, because coming in, we're expecting it to be patch 12.13. We'll let you know if it's not, but that is what the assumption we're going off. Sivir got the massive rework across the board. Long story short, she got a lot more bells and whistles. She could do a lot more. Her early game presence is a bit worse, but she could clear waves extremely consistently after one item and just roam with a resetting ultimate. Sounds pretty good, right? I think it's a pick that we're going to see in early priority from both of these teams, especially because between them, Zeri has been such high priority, and it's a champion that can just almost stonewall the matchup, where Zeri's biggest strength is with a Yuumi. She sits in lane and doesn't die. Sivir turbo pushes the wave and can roam mid with your support, and suddenly the map becomes, well, pretty unstable for the enemy team. So I think that that's one of the few ways we could see Hawks actually use their bot lane to win that matchup.
Yeah, I think that there is a small caveat on that, though, and that is Kalista. Kalista historically has been a really strong counter into the Sivir because she has a little bit more pressure and presence in the early game. And that Rend is so difficult for you to spell shield, and so much of Kalista's damage is in that ability. So if we see one of these teams opt towards the Sivir, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Kalista come out. We know that Utapon plays it a bunch. He's already played it 3 times this split, but we haven't yet seen it from Marble. So I think if Sivir is being contested, then we also need to see a similar priority around that pick.
Yeah, there definitely is potential for that. Obviously, it's been cropping up a lot more in the leagues. I think LPL particularly are championing Kalista all the time. So there is definitely roles. And obviously, we've all seen the clips of new Sivir as well when it has been played in other leagues. And it does definitely look strong. This bot lane is a big focus. And obviously, it's one that we do question a lot for the time of the Hawks. Obviously, there have been big question marks around that. But one person that we do not question, or question maybe a little bit less, is definitely their mid laner. Do you think that maybe they could play this one through Melvin? Or do you feel like maybe the Hawks shift it up into the mid lane, play it through that? Or do you feel like maybe Dasher won't be able to get the leads that he needs in this game?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think obviously mid is very matchup dependent. And the thing is, Corki was just nerfed on this patch. It is Dasher's most played of the splits so far. 3 games, with their second being on the Lissandra and the Sylas. So I think that we are going to see a lot more interaction in this lane than we'd otherwise get, which is always a win, because if we're classifying Jett as the top mid in the league, this is 2 and 3, hands down. So we should get as close a matchup as we're going to get, which means you can't talk about mid without the jungles, and then we have to start thinking about which one of those picks can start to come out, whether that Poppy's going to remain the super high priority, the Wukong Viego is something both of these players love. Caveat though, if this is 12.13, Divine Sunderer just got smashed in the early game.
Yeah, definitely not as fun. But I will say there are other builds for Poppy. You know, you could go full tank. There are ways around that. And I will say that Blank has been a bit of a star performer. You know, I feel like I'm talking a lot about the Hawks, but that's because I feel like DFM are kind of just like the Giants. You know, they're the Monstars. If we were going back to Looney Tunes, you know, the Hawks are going to be the ones that need the special water to get themselves back into this game. And I'm not going to lie, I don't know if they've got the facilities for that big man. It's going to be a little bit difficult for them to run this one. Middlecourt, when you look at DFM though, the new changes to the meta, do you feel like they're going to play classic, or do you feel like they're going to maybe switch up where they put their priority? I feel like a lot of their priority this season has been maybe a little bit away from Ebby. I feel like we haven't really seen him as the main guy.
Yeah, well, I think Ebby is always the main character. It just depends on how many people are actually involved in the story. Because you're never going to be able to shut him down. He's always going to be relevant domestically. Internationally, obviously, he's had a few struggles from here to there. But I think that DFM fundamentally are a flexible team. And that's what's always benefited them in the LJL, is that they can really play towards any of these lanes. So with the success that honestly has been coming out from the bottom side of the Hawks, maybe we do see a bit more priority from DFM towards that bottom side of the map. But I think that we really need to be seeing the drafts first before we can predict where DFM are going to be going, because honestly, sometimes they're just kind of gigabrain and they're able to see like chinks in the armor of teams that no one else really can. And they are so good at exploiting that, both in draft and in gameplay.
A perfect example, right? That Sengoku game with the Mordekaiser pick from Eddie just decimated that comp. There was nothing that Sengoku could do to handle it. So absolutely have to agree with you there. When we look at the width of the champion pools for DFM, 3 different members have 7 or more champions over 11 games this split. Absolutely insane. How are you supposed to draft around that, especially when such a big patch came in? There's so many different buffs and nerfs. We can't list them all off for you, but that just means that now if you're the Hawks, you've got to be coming in with a very clear game plan. Otherwise, expect to get run circles around you.
Yeah, a lot of different champions. I will say there is some crossover of the champion pools, but I guess when you're playing so many different champions, of course that's going to happen. You know, like it's kind of like, well, if you played every champion in the game, someone would have played what you've played as well. It does feel like, though, the meta is still kind of similar to when we last left. I feel like it's been so long since I got to watch LJ. You know, it's been so long, and I'm very happy that we're back. You know, I want you guys at home to feel that, and I hope you guys feel that as well. But this is a banger. Is it upset day today? That's the question. We're going to go with predictions for the final question. Melvin Izzle, who wins game 1?
I mean, the easy answer is DFM, and I'm going to be a coward and agree with it because I don't know. I think that I like Hawks. Hawks will put up a fight. There you go. That's what I'll say.
Okay. And for you, Middlecott, are you of similar opinion?
Go on.
Are you going to maybe venture out?
Go on.
Go on. Hawks are going to win it. Hawks are going to win it. I think that I think that Blank and Dasher have actually been playing really, really well. And we talked about this duo a lot last split, like having really, really good ideas individually, but not really pairing up as well. The synergy has really grown coming through into summer. And while Steel and Yaharong definitely have that synergy, this mid-jungle 2v2 is going to be so intense. I feel like the Hawks are just going to edge it out, and that's where they're going to be able to find their wins.
Well, we are going to find out. We're going into pick and ban for game number 1. Middlecott, Melvin Izzle, let's get it done.
Hey, let's go, everybody. Welcome into the champion select for the first game of the day. DFM versus the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming. We got to get the full name in once every broadcasters. We're seeing a fair few power picks taken off the board here, Melvin Izzle.
I absolutely love that Hawks recognize what you were just talking about and getting rid of that Kalista. The best way that we can imagine Hawks to win this now that the Sivir is off the table is to get a bot lane that doesn't have to interact. You see, DFM have removed that comfort away from Reiner, taken away the Rel. Standard picks other than that have been banned away, with that Poppy being such a nuisance. Big pick for Blank throughout the split. And now, question is, with both Zeri and Sivir banned, is Yuumi a priority for DFM? No, they stick with the Wukong.
And this feels like fairly standard. Obviously, the Poppy is a really good answer into that Wukong, and with that taken off the board, DFM feel comfortable to lock that in. AD carry pool has been pitched a fair bit by the Hawks, and they're going to be taking up this Aphelios, which has been Marvel's sort of preferred pick when he wants to carry on, but now Blank is going to have to find something a little bit more early game focused in the jungle. I wouldn't be surprised if we just see the Wukong for Viego trade.
It is quite literally as standard as it gets. The top 3 picks for both of these junglers is the Poppy, Viego, Wukong in whichever order your preference. So now, question is going back over to DFM. You've got a reset tool in the form of that Viego, and then the Aphelios. Are you going to opt to go for the scrap with them in melee range, or are you going to try and outrange them? There's many different ways you can go about it, so there's not much point trying to put a specific style down to DFM until we see where they go.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the Wukong offers you as a first pick. It's so versatile as a champion, it does so many different things that you can kind of pair whatever you want with it. Taliyah being locked in. Now, there is a slight potential for a Wukong type Taliyah jungle flex going on, but I think it's a bit more likely that we're seeing Steel on the Monkey and Yaharong piloting Taliyah.
That is the most likely alteration of it, and we'll wait and see what we get for this third pick. Because one thing I will say about the Taliyah plus the Wukong itself is that when you have these two, if it is the Taliyah mid with the Wukong jungle, the normal air quote alteration, then the biggest issue of Wukong is they struggle to get stuff done early. But Taliyah can turbo push that mid wave and roam with their jungler to enable very early invades and almost just circumvent the weakness that Steel should have on this pick.
And with this Ashe locked in for DFM, they're sort of indicating that bot lane is going to be a little bit more weak side, a little bit more utility focused, but you need to remember that whilst the Ashe is a bit more of a utility marksman, that means that you've got a bit more of that gank setup. So if we do want to see Yaharong and Steel making their way into the bot lane, they're going to have a couple more tools in their kit to make plays work out there. Blind Nah here for Konatsu in the top lane. Not really surprised by that. It's sort of become a pick that you can just throw down wherever you want in the draft.
It's an absolute standard across the world at this point. It just makes sense as a champion that if you don't have a specific angle to take, you get it. And I actually do like that quite a lot with the Seraphine ban, because one thing I will say about this Ashe pick in particular, while it hasn't been super prevalent around the world, can always go in the support role, which means that whichever one the Hawks opt to ban out, DFM still are left with plenty of options in this second rotation. So really smart drafting coming out, what we expect from DFM. How do the Hawks attack it? Do you opt for another bot lane-centric ban, or get rid of all these Gnar counters that Ebby clearly will have 100 of in the waiting room?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. When you are playing against a player like Ebby who has so many things that they can throw into the Gnar, maybe you just go, do you know what? You can do whatever you want. We'll ban away the center. Very, very strong in the bot lane and can be paired up with that Ashe.
4 to 5 bot lane bans from the Hawks. That is a way to go. Dasher in the previous match had 3 to 5 mid lane bans levied against them, and this time they're saying, actually, we quite like that tactic. Utapon, what have you got? As now, we have finished off with 2 standard mid lane bans. What is it we're going to see here? Who is going to get left out to dry? Will it be that bot lane matchup being saved for the last pick for Reiner, or is it going to be mid lane? Will be the mid.
Yeah. So the Tahm Kench, I don't think is really a surprise. It's been paired up with the Aphelios for ages, and it is one of those champions that Reiner can play when stuff like the Rel is off the table. It's going to offer a bit more safety to the Hawks, but they're kind of lacking a little bit of an engage, kind of lacking a big AP threat. We'll have to see if Dasher is going to be able to lock in something that is going to provide all those tools as the final pick, because we're getting a load of hovers here on the DFM side. Obviously, Evie has played a load of champions this split, and he's going to add another one to that pool with the Shyvana locked in.
And that is the role starting to fall into place. Just this bot lane now that we need to figure out what DFM wants to do with it. If I'm looking at this one, you currently have a really strong bot potential to play around post 6. The only issue is Tahm Kench is very good at saving their ADC from an Ashe. So I like this going towards more of the Enchanter routes. You can bully the lane without being so reliant on the Enchanted Crystal Arrow to win it.
Yeah, try and get that sort of double range dominance in. Obviously, the Tahm Kench and the Aphelios can do things in the early stages, but the poke is honestly just too much at some point. The Swain now going to be picked up for Dasher. He has played this one before, and whilst it's not a pure AP carry threat, what it can do is buy so much time in team fights for the likes of Blank, for the likes of Marble as well, on these sort of emo boy carries to really pop off.
And one thing I will say as well about this Swain is that saving it for the last pick is just so much better, because it means it removes the risk of Sylas, right? Sylas is just a better version of Swain, so Dasher should have a really confident way to play throughout this game, especially once you get to those dragon fights, which in reality, the matchup we saw on Sunday between the Hawks and Rascal Jester, the Swain really did so much around multiple different fights. I could go on and talk about these different objective plays that the Hawks went for, but considering it was their biggest weakness, I'm really curious to see, was it a fluke that they just played really well against RJ? Or is it a consistent change and we've suddenly got a top 3 as opposed to a top 2 and everybody else crying below?
I think this is one of the really difficult things that comes when discussing a league where there is such a clear divide between the teams at the top and the teams at the bottom, because yeah, you can beat RJ, you can beat Burning Core, you can beat CJ as much as you like, but how much do those wins actually mean when it comes to playing up against the likes of DFM and Sengoku, who you imagine that the Hawks are going to be having a bit of a closer eye on in terms of their goals for the end of this split?
Exactly, with so many games still left to play between these teams, a whole 10 games left, there is the potential for Hawks to try and fight their way up towards that Juggernaut match. Obviously, they don't have the full control themselves, but if they were to be able to take down DFM, that would be the first step towards securing yourself that extra bit of security in playoffs.
Yeah. Fundamentally, you can only win as many games as you can. And if you have to rely a little bit on the rest of the league to sort out in a way that benefits you, that's kind of the lot that you're left with. But I think that the Hawks here have actually got a draft that really fits into the styles that they want to play. But we're going to have to see if they are able to execute it, as we are going to be jumping onto the Rift for DFM versus the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming. Hey, we said it a second time. It's game on.
Okay, and there's an invade.
DFM stacking the bot lane.
That is a way to try and blow early summoners and swing that bot lane matchup. Very nicely done from Hawks to not fall to that one immediately. And you see the response, beautiful, coming out. Instant ward from Dasher. And then while Konatsu doesn't place a ward themselves, they do bait it. So for all intents and purposes, DFM are assuming everything in their jungle is now spotted.
I like that you touched on Konatsu there, because something has caught my eye, Melvin, as well. This is a ghost TP on the Gnar. I feel like this is a specific tech into the Shyvana. Am I wrong?
So I think that generally Ghost is a really good summoner spell, but you are correct. That is just one of the ways that you can try and get away, because you see Ebby with the Ghost for himself. It makes complete sense, because the way that Shyvana beats you with the presumed Bruiser build we'll see this game is by sticking to you in elongated fights. Now, if Konatsu can leverage the either Mega Gnar CC or the Mini Gnar kiting with the Hyper Procs, then you can actually get away from Shyvana and kind of turn the matchup. It doesn't make it winning, but it definitely means that you survive it throughout all points.
Yeah, so as we're looking towards the bot side of the map, as Konatsu is running away in the river, Ebby just loves to do this, just constantly beats up on people in melee range, but Konatsu is actually kiting towards Blanka. Ward has spotted out the Hawks jungler, as Ebby is just absolutely content to sit in the river and deny Konatsu as much XP as possible.
Which is a really big swing, because if Ebby gets to hit that level 2, then the speed boost that he can chuck in to stick on top of Konatsu, when you remember the fact that neither of these laners have flash, it becomes a very different lane matchup to watch than when you can always assume, oh, they could just blow flash and escape this trade.
Yeah, and I mean, that possibly is going to be an advantage for the Gnar, right? Because he does have that hop. He has got those more direct mobility tools. Obviously, Ebby is going to be able to go very, very quickly with the Ghost and the Burnout combo on the Shyvana. That's not going to help you get over any walls until you hit level 6.
Precisely. As we do see both of the top laners' Ghosts are used, it means they are both wide open for gank potential. And
yeah, Dasher having a lot of fun in the mid lane matchup, actually. They're dodging away from the knock-up as... In the bot side, we're seeing Utapon and Harp with the majority of the lane priority. I don't think either of us is surprised by that.
No, it's not what we were... nothing out of the ordinary. There you go. With the double range versus range melee, this is just the way that nature goes in the bottom lane. As to loop back around to these junglers, it has been a completely split map to this point. With that level 1 play from DFM to go for the invade, this has just enabled Harp and Utapon to push up like this, because they're under no threat of getting ganked. You know for a fact that if Blank wants to...
Liner actually take it very low. The Guardian proc.
I did not think that would get as low as they did.
Yeah.
No E for the Tahm Kench there. Only level 2, hence the fact that that was such a narrow window. Wow, that is going to be quite the nuisance for Marble now, who is just going to get zoned off of XP on the tower. They fortunately are against a double ranged and nobody who can really enable a dive yet until Lulu hits that level 6, so all good for him to just collect the CS, as Blank is spotted out by the Hawkshot.
Yeah, it's such an incredible tool for a professional player. It's kind of like why I don't think that Ashe can ever really be in a state where she does too much damage, because the tools that she can provide in a professional environment are honestly cheating to a certain extent.
she's literally map hacks. Like, I know there's always the thing of like, oh, you know, well, if you path perfectly and you track everything, you know, you could get away with it and you know exactly where they should be. But no, Ashe is cheating to an extent where you do know where the enemy jungler is, as we do get a pretty neutral trade in the mid lane. And this is where we get to witness why the Swain is such a good pick into Taliyah. First of all, no dashes. So unless you're getting the knock-up, you lose out on a decent bit of your utility for Yaharong. And if you ever don't get that knock-up, well, you see it right there. The tools that Dasher has to respond is massive, as we have both supports vibing around mid.
Yeah, so the Hawks know that Harp is here, but I believe that Lina has gone unspotted. Now, Ward on the other side of the wall is going to spot blank, as they are going to be able to clear it, and Harp backs away. I'd like to see both these supports being active on the map. This is something that I think we've praised both Lina and Harp actually a fair bit for, but not quite able to find anything there.
As we have got such a peaceful map state with just the tension rising. We're getting close to that level 6 mark, and I think top lane is the point where we're really going to start to see action, because it will enable Ebby to just jump in and win these trades off of base stats alone onto Konatsu. I'm sure that those ghosts will not be lasting long off of cooldown at this point.
Yeah, well, it's like a 180 or a 210 second cooldown. It's like you can kind of use it in the same way that you would use an ultimate, honestly, with the amount of availability, the amount of uptime that summoner spell is going to have, as Blank clears out that control ward, but isn't able to find any ingress into the bottom half of the map. Dragon's been on the rift for about a minute or so, as two junglers not quite going to be meeting up in the river, as actually Steel, maybe a little bit caught here, is going to be forced back away from Dasher, but the Never Move going wide. Not going to be catching out the DFM jungler, as Ebby is going in on the top side, and Konatsu, able to kite away, is about to go Mega, so a little bit of bonus HP and resistances, and actually not going to look for the play onto the Shyvana.
Not too bad from Konatsu right there, as we do get... I didn't even think about this until right now, but we do have 2 Transformers in the top lane as well. That's just exciting to see. It. You quite literally get 2 different matchups in the top lane, like 4 different potential alterations, depending on who's in their upgraded form or not. But point being, Ebby just clearing the wave with their dragon form, able to base here, going to be standard. You don't really get to do much on the Shyvana unless the Gnar makes a critical mistake, especially with this ghost tech from Konatsu that we've seen.
Yeah.
It's more so about the almost team fight space that Shyvana does a very similar job to the Gnar of just buying a load of area and enabling your carries to auto attack for free, which when we look down, you have got a very good DPS in the mid and bot lane from both teams. So it's going to be essential to see what kind of roles these top laners play when team fights start rolling around.
I'm going to be very excited to see that, as we may be getting some action a little bit earlier on into the game. As Steel has started up this Drake, but the Hawks aren't letting him take it without any response. Lina are going to be forced to flash over the wall, and DFM are going to claim first objective in this game.
Very narrowly, but nicely done from everybody on DFM to collapse that, as arrow goes a little wide. There was still a cleanse available, so I don't think that was ever going to result in a kill. As now, we do have just a solitary plate being taken for Konatsu, as Ebby is walking back up after assisting his team get in on that objective. Not going to be too crucial, as I do want to point out we have got the first item Ionian boots for Ebby, meaning that 210 second cooldown on the Ghost is now even lower, and more importantly, even lower than Konatsu's. And since we're seeing every aggressive tool being used off cooldown, that can actually make a big difference in some of these plays.
And so another thing about these Boots of Lucidity, I believe they actually allow you to get 2 Flame Breaths off in your Dragon form. They allow you to get an extra Flame Breath off in your Dragon form, which is so important because of the insane damage that ability does. And DFM, they secured the first Drake, and with Ebby able to move down towards this Herald, Steel coming up here as well, they're going to be double dipping on the early game objectives, and Hawks aren't really in a position to respond.
This is more of what we were expecting from the Hawks if you were to ignore that previous game. I'm curious to see what happens once they start to pick up those item spikes, because we do see Dasher is going for this Imperial Mandate plus Rylai's build, which means you are gimping your late game damage in exchange for spiking massively around the 20 to 15 minute mark. So Hawks are saying, once we get to that second, third dragon, then we're going to be online, then we're going to be really scrapping with you, which, considering how much of an emphasis we put on the early to mid game for these teams, is very important.
Yeah, and we kind of get this whenever you have sort of two higher end teams going at it. You either have massively explosive early games, or you have what we've got in this game, where it's a little bit more tepid. Both teams sort of trying to feel each other out, neither really giving away any obvious weaknesses, and trying to force them becomes very, very difficult because you know how strong your opponent is at making responsive plays.
Exactly, and if you do make an error, the enemy team will capitalize. Especially, we see every overextension on this bot lane, Dasher walking down, fishing with those Vision of Empires, seeing if they could potentially enable a counterattack. Reiner just tagged over to the level 6 now, so if we do ever see a particularly long bot lane scrap, there's the potential for that to be important, maybe getting spat out under the enemy tower.
Ooh, very decent trade from the Swain in the mid lane there. Yaharong not having fun in this matchup at all. And we are starting to see itemization completions coming through here. Melvin Izzle, the Kempuk Chainsword for Blank, actually not going to be matched by Steel on the other side, going for a Divine Sunderer build on the Wukong.
I don't really like that personally, because the biggest reason that this Kempunk Chainsword is going to such prominence is, firstly, it's insanely gold efficient. 138% gold efficient, which is amazing, considering you get the raw stats, and then you also get to have that anti-heal, which is such a sought-after stat in the current metagame. And on top of that, the Divine Sunderer does more for you. I'm actually going to wait a moment, because it could be a dead Blank.
Yeah, Blank has spotted out the ward. He's going to be able to flash away just in time to get out of that engagement. So DFM burning the enemy jungler's flash, but not getting any more.
And because Blank is in the area, this won't turn into a bot lane force, having just used that Wukong ultimate. Not going to be worth the risk. Back to the Chainsword versus Sunderer. So the biggest change that Sunderer had was it was basically made so that the heal is now less unless you have a lot of bonus AD. So getting it second after you've already got the Chainsword is really good. Getting it first, much less effective. This bot lane tower's probably going to die. Will we get a fight after?
Yeah, potentially, as we are going to see the dive forward from Liner onto Utapon. Blank gets turned into a Munchkin as, well, opening up with the guns, but only onto the Wukong clone, so still going to be absolutely fine with that one. Ebby once again ulting on cooldown in this top side, but Kanatsu throwing him against the wall, giving as good as he gets.
Yeah, as we've seen this Kanatsu lane go extremely well. Historically, were those players that could always handle Ebby in the lane, and actually managing to stay even, if not ahead in CS. Really impressive when it is a counter pick. At the end of the day, Shyvana's strongest point isn't the lane phase, but as you can see right there, thank you for the demonstration, it's nothing that you should be calling a slouch.
Yeah, no, maybe we need
the
some help.
arrow.
As an Enchanted Crystal Arrow is going to be not
pretty
hitting Kanatsu. See, if that was against any other top laner in the league, they would have backed off after taking that negative trade, been stood under the tower and would have been a sitting duck. But Kanatsu's like, no, I'm absolutely happy to go forward. I really want to stance up to Ebby and show how strong I can be.
I completely agree. While it sounded almost, a half joke, it was completely true, right? At the end of the day, most people would decide on this HP it's not worth it. But assessing the fact you're against a Shyvana, you have equal ghost cooldown, you're fine. You can walk up there, right? There is nothing Ebby can physically do to close that gap. It doesn't matter how good of a player you are limited by your champion's capabilities. As now, we do just get the second dragon being taken from the Hawks, willingly forfeiting this one, as Kanatsu is about to tag over to the Mega. Ebby also about to get that dragon form. We do have a collapse potentially coming out from the Hawks, and I think this is the closest thing to a counterplay you can really get.
Yeah, but with Ebby going Mega, using that Flame Breath to clear out the wave, they're going to be a little bit safer than they otherwise would be. And if Hawks do want to go for this play, which it now looks like they aren't, it would have taken so much time. So DFM kind of getting another free Drake on the map, and with the first tower that they were able to take down in the bot lane, it really feels like our champions are running the game at the moment, as Dasher is going to be jumped onto here, flashes out. Once again, Yaharong and Steel pairing up in the bot side jungle to take away summoners.
Is going to be a trade, though, because Yaharong had to go over the wall himself to actually get in there for the damage. So it's even, and both mid laners have Spellbook. So in the long term, isn't going to change much, but just asserting that tempo and that pressure for DFM, you're completely right. It just goes to show that they are running this game so far. Not much of a gold lead, but when you're 2 dragons up, we saw it with that first matchup we had. I believe it was the second game we had on Sunday. I'm trying to remember the specifics of the teams, but it was it was the CJ Burning Call. That was
Yes,
it.
it was.
The CJ
Yes,
Burning
it
Call,
was.
and it was the stacking of the early dragons, right, was the only reason CGA was able to thief that game away.
Yeah.
And it is something that game was a different type of League of Legends, right? But when you have DFM, 2 dragons is a really scary prospect because you do have to realize that this soul is basically an inevitability if you don't turn your luck around at the next item spike for Hawks.
And the thing is, unlike CGA, DFM have actually found themselves with a gold advantage coming out of the early game. Only about 1,000, which isn't massive, but against Hawks, who we have said has had strong early games themselves, it's a real showing of the ability that DFM do have to play out these early stages. But that being said, the Hawks definitely still within touching distance. Melvin Izzle, do you think that either team is particularly worried about this current game state?
I think that the Hawks are a little bit upset, as we said a minute ago, with Dasher opting for this particular itemization. Oh, hold on. Kanatsu not making over the wall. Not going to mean much. Was really curious to see how aggressive Ebby was going to get. You see that he still has his own ghost, so Kanatsu wants to commit to this.
Yeah, and Kanatsu has the Trinity Force as well, and is going to be going Mega relatively soon. I love this, man. Both top laners completely duking it out, willing to trade cooldowns, trade HP as much as possible as Steel and Harp starting up this Rift Herald, and the Hawks are in the area. Teleport into the mid lane from Yaharong. And going to back away from Sheldon for now. Potential 4v4 in this top side river as the Hawkshot is going to come out and spot away the Hawks retreat.
Currently hard limited to a 4v4 with both top laners having used their significant cooldowns on bot. Both have a TP, but a Mini-Gnar and a non-dragon Shyvana is not exactly the cavalry you really hope for. Yaharong basically soloing out this objective, though. This is really nice by DFM. I do think that Hawks know, because you have that control ward in the pit, so you can see what's happening, but no real response.
Blank, potentially a little bit risky there with the Hex Gate. Of course, we are going to be having that Hex Tech Drake spawning in a minute and 40's time. Kanatsu beating up on this bot lane tower, but the minion wave not quite enough for them to take the full thing down. Only one structure has actually fallen so far in this game, Melvin. So it's been a little bit too slow paced for my liking. But again, neither of these teams wants to make an obvious mistake because they know how brutally the opponent will capitalize on it.
And I think there is a very key point here where you want to not exactly rush to the finish line when you have champions like the Aphelios, like the Swain, even when you are going for that early spike. Dasher isn't out yet, right? They don't have that Rylai's as Marble is getting played on here.
Yeah, the Weavers will knocking them away from DFM Sieges. That's a teleport directly into a knock-up, and that is first blood secured at 17 minutes for DFM. Take down the mid lane tower as well, and they may be looking for a couple more kills as Blank getting jumped onto, but is able to fly away. Reiner may be caught out as him and Dasher are on the wrong side of the rift. That top lane tower may be able to provide a quantum of solace for them, but the Tahm Kench is going to be the sacrificial. Catfish is taken out by Yaharong.
You do have any attempt at a return play, and against a lesser team, that would have been a mid tower for the Hawks, but DFM leaving their ADC and sending support over to keep them safe and avoid any counterattack. This is just the caliber of the team.
Ebby?
That hurt.
Do you know what? Fair play. I didn't think the Shyvana would be able to half health the Swain like that, but apparently that's just how the champion works.
Well, remember, this is a Swain with a support item and no supplementary items at this point.
Has the flash, has the cleanse, is going to be forced to use that. That was always perfect. Captain Jack Eskers willing to trade a couple of auto attacks as well as Yaharong and Harp are here to back him up. Kinatsu going to be not back, going to be stunned, but still relatively tanky even on this Mini-Gnar. Doesn't want to take too many of those threaded volleys though.
The Hex Dragon is up and the Crystal Arrow is about to be up for Utapon. This is a 4v5. This is as good of a shot as you're going to get for the Hawks, but you need to be quick because otherwise you see the Dragon is coming and they want to capture it.
Yeah, Kanatsu's Mega Gnar is slowly timing out the Enchanted Crystal Arrow onto that big tank as Dasher is attempting to buy some time in the front line, but he's already taken solo on the Swain. He's going to be forced to flash away, a double pullback, but DFM's health bars just aren't going down. They're going to claim their third Drake of the game, and they're already on soul point.
And now this is just a collapse. I've seen this before from DFM. They have got them in a barrel.
Yeah, absolutely, as Reiner is going to go forward, trying to break his way out of that potential casket, but in dives Steel the Cyclone. Absolutely terrifying, combined with the Wild Growth as well, as the kills start to come through. Nard into the wall, that's good from Kinatsu, but it's not enough to save their team. It's going to be 4-0 in favor of DFM, and my oh my, have they turned up the gas.
Absolutely exploded the game state. Not only do they win that fight, get those objectives, but you see in the mid lane, Utapon taking out mid lane turrets as well. We were talking about how slow it was, how few structures. But the thing is, if we watch how this fight plays out, Dasher, only with the Imperial Mandate, that item is really good if you could slow people. No Rylai's in pocket yet, so it's only off of Dasher's basic abilities do they get any value from this Mythic. And you can see how low the damage is that he's dealing. Normally, you'd be terrified of walking into this Swain, and once the Swain ult is gone, what do you do as a team? Well, the Hawks try and base, but DFM are not going to let you get away with that. The Hawk shot spotting out every single member bar Kanatsu who is already being headed off. Yaharong is forced to flash away, but watch this Weaver's Wall in a moment. This really seals the deal and just ends the game state for the Hawks.
Yeah, Yaharong, absolutely pixel perfect placement on that one. And there's nowhere to go. You've got a decent ultimate coming out from Kinatsu there, but it doesn't really contribute enough to the fight to save the members of the Hawks. And Melvin, it feels like we're watching vintage Prime DFM, where they don't need to make all this action happen in the early stages because they're just going to win around the 20-minute mark. Although the Hawks are still going to be going for response plays, are still going to be locked up in the front line. But it's actually Reiner who's taken the damage. It's Reiner who is taken out, and Dasher could buy as much time as he like in the front line, but he's not going to be resurrecting his supporters. Utapon still firing out the arrows, still firing out the damage. And DFM, they find even more kills. Hawks aren't even going to take down anyone. 10-0 right now for the 10-1 team.
You go proactive and you get destroyed. DFM gonna walk this one over to the Baron. Only thing negative on the map is Kanatsu taking a bot lane tower, and I don't think that DFM are going to be crying over that one. Securing this objective with Yaharong actually making his way down here. This could just be a kill on Kanatsu over time. No ghost.
Yeah, that Gnar is not particularly tanky. The Trinity Force, no Hullbreaker available. The slow and the crunch away is just about going to get them out, as Reiner is here to support their top laner. Actually might be looking for a kill onto Yaharong here. Backing in the bush, backing on that wall, but Kinatsu is very, very low. The eat up onto the Taliyah, the burn down, the kill coming through, but the threaded body goes the wrong way. It doesn't matter! A double kill for Yaharong!
Oh no, every moment is a disaster. Hawks are effectively getting perfect game right now.
Yeah, that tower being taken down, the only thing preventing DFM from having a completely clean slate, a complete wipe in this game. And I mean, credit for Hawks trying to make a play, trying to get back into the game, but the margin's so close and just in favor of Detonation Focus Me.
And it's almost deja vu. Look at how little damage Dasher is doing, because if you are not proccing this Imperial Mandate and having your team then reactivate the proc, you just lose so much value on the pick, which means if you're on the back foot, it doesn't work. And shockingly, the Hawks have been on the back foot the whole game. Pretty much 10 minutes on, DFM decide, all right, now is when we're going to win. And it's just been no counterplay almost from Hawks.
This has been absolutely incredible for DFM. We wondered if coming through after the break, having to play versus Sengoku and the Hawks, the number 2, the number 3 team, would phase DFM at all. But they are just going forward with absolute impunity. It's 14-0 right now, Melvin Izzle. They only lost 1 in their game versus Sengoku, and I don't think anyone's going to be dying in this game.
There really shouldn't be, with a Lulu on the team as well, as now Hawks, you've got to put up a fight eventually, right? Like, you can't just let them in the game.
Double pullback, still is being played onto, but it's just a clone. You've killed one person on DFM, but it was a facsimile. It was a fake. It didn't even matter. As now Yaharong goes in with the Weaver's Wall, and Ebby is able to buy time in the front line. That Flame Breath does so much damage as Kinatsu falls once again. It's absolute perfection from the number 1 team in the LJL, as everything that the Hawks can do is taken apart. Their wings have been clipped. Their feathers have been burnt off. And DFM take down the final Nexus tower. They're going to farm some kills in the fountain as well, potentially. This is what domination looks like.
And they secure that head-to-head against the Hawks. Now, there is no way for the Hawks to have a hope in hell at overtaking DFM in the regular season. And when you're looking on that kind of form, it makes you think, maybe nobody can beat DFM when they're playing like this.
Oh my word.
Okay.
That win that Sengoku got on day one of the split, it's looking like the only L that DFM are going to be taking this summer.
Potentially, at least until those best of series. It very much makes me hopeful for that next Sengoku DFM matchup, because in that kind of form, it literally only gets easier for DFM now up until that rematch. So we have got at least 4 more game days of domination from DFM to go now.
Holy fish moly. I've not seen domination like that in a game in quite a while. We are going to be breaking it down in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you after this break.
Well, game 1 is done, and I don't think we're surprised who won, but it definitely was a very fast fashion, and it didn't look like it was going to be, but we are going to have the pick and ban on your screen, and I'll go to you, Melvin, first, because you had some particular choice of words, I guess, about the Hawks draft.
Well, I'll put it politely. I like the idea of banning away 5 bot laners, but then you have to play around bot lane. And that didn't really happen from the Hawks. In fact, to the extent that DFM recognized this immediately, not only did they get a winning bot lane matchup, first of all, They then split the map with a level 1 invade and made it so there was nothing Hawks could do to swing this bot lane early matchup. And then after that, they kind of just floundered around and the game existed in a neutral state for, 15 minutes or so.
And I think that something we touched on before the game was that, or in the draft, was that banning out Ebby is not really a good idea a lot of the time because he can kind of play anything into you. There were 5 bot lane bans thrown at Utapod this game, and they were still able to pull out the Ashe, which was a really strong pick, I think, for DFM. Obviously, it doesn't deal as much damage, but it got them a lot of lane priority around that bot side, and it really never felt like Marble got into this game.
Yeah, indeed. And you said, looking at the picks, we had 2 Transformers in the top side. Well, it's pretty clear that DFM were the Autobots because they seem like they were Optimus Prime at the moment. They are at top form and they really were showing how strong they can be. And Middlecourt, I know you had a few suggestions as well in terms of saying Goku, because I know both of you kind of were discussing this before we came back about how they had a comp. They didn't necessarily play it to their strength.
Yeah, and whilst I like Blank on the Viego, just conceptually, I think that he's pretty fine at the champion. I think maybe something a little bit more early game skewed. I know that Volibear is not really as strong right now, and Xin Zhao is sort of is not there. And there are a couple of picks that can exist in the early stages. So I think that maybe Xin Zhao would have been something they could have gone towards, but I think fundamentally that level 1, that split map state that ended up emerging against the Hawks was the real thing that shut them down.
Yeah, indeed. And Melvin, you also said a little bit about how their comp functions and how they maybe didn't max out on how they could have played it.
Yeah, the thing is that with that Swain pick in the mid lane, while I think fundamentally is a very strong champion, there are the 2 ways of going about it. If you go for the Landries, you get that reliable mid to late game, but you're a bit worse around the first 2 dragons. Now, the thing is, for Dasher, they had the Imperial Mandate, but because of when DFM really turned on the gas and just obliterated the Hawks, Dasher had to go second item Zhonya's. The only reason that Mandate build works is because you get to go Mandate, Rylai's, your ultimate, procs it continuously, insane damage, especially when you're going forward and your team are activating those procs on repeat. We saw it. You probably would be able to click on the item and get about 1,000 damage done from the Mandate by the end of that game. It did nothing. This Swain pick just fell apart because the team couldn't work around it.
Yeah, now onto the flip side of the draft, I want to talk quickly about this Shyvana because I feel like Shyvana has been really popular in a lot of regions, maybe not so much in the LGL. Melvin Izzle, is this kind of the new top meta that we're expecting? Are we going to be seeing a lot of Shyvanas today?
I think that if the Gnar keeps showing up, there's no reason to not pick it. We saw Ebby pilot it to perfection in this matchup, just with the level 1 bullying and never really letting the foot off the gas from then. The Ghost used off cooldown, Dragon Form used off cooldown.
Yes.
You're just a better version than Gnar.
I think that's the key thing. In the laning phase, you need to play the Shyvana aggressively against the Gnar. Otherwise, you are just going to get poked down continuously when he's in that mini Gnar form. I feel like we've seen the Shyvana pulled out a couple of times from other top laners in the LGL that haven't quite understood the level of aggression required to make this pick work. And if we're asking for aggression out of top laners, you're not going to get any more aggressive than Ebby.
No, indeed. And let's roll to our first clip of this game because we've got a few for you today.
The Tahm Kench 100-0 at level 3.
Yeah,
and that's
Melvin,
the thing,
although,
right?
would you have flashed or not? Like that was
I'm worthless. I would flash. I'd be going right over to that Tribush wall in a second. No, as soon as the Lulu sidesteps me like that, the mental is gone.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the level up happens for the Lulu as the Tahm Kench is channeling the knock up. So he pops out, doesn't get the knock up, and then just gets, destroyed by this Lulu laughing at them.
I imagine he jumps in, he comes out, sees Lulu sidesteps, and he's like, it's not looking good, Brev. It's not looking good. But talking about not looking good, Brev, let's go into the second clip. This was a team way, and then this occurs.
Yeah,
It's brutal.
Yeah, it really, really is. This is a 4v5, by the way. Utapon is just pushing up the mid lane, but DFM recognize that they can go forward so aggressively onto this Hawks that this composition that has been drafted against them really doesn't have fun going backwards. And, I mean, the Weaver's Wall, the Cyclone, the Wild Grove, everything that DFM are throwing at saying Hawks here is kind of going unanswered.
And you only have the 2 flashes available, and it's on both Blank and Marble, the people that are the furthest back in this almost train of the Hawks trying to get to safety. So the wall is even more value. The fact that you have a Gnar who doesn't have the Flash Summoner spell in the first place means that any hope of getting out was pretty much gone straight away, and just doubles down on the value that this Taliyah pick had.
Yeah, it was a really good look from DFM. I think they look really, really strong. You said on the cast, the Hawks, their wings, their feathers have been burned. Are they going to be a bit like Phoenixes? You know, are they going to rise from those ashes after a pretty scorching defeat? Admittedly, it does feel like it's a little bit of out of the fire into the flames, because their next matchup is fiery indeed. They're against the marching strength of Sengoku.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a rough start to the third round robin for the Hawks, but we'll see if they can come back and make splashes. Right now, though, DFM are the one making waves and absolutely crushing their opponents, but we will see if that will continue throughout the round robin. But we're going to go for a quick break, and then next will be Sengoku versus V3. Don't go anywhere. We got a lot of LJ action for today.